Hi everyone, I'd like to thank everyone personally for coming today sorry, I said I'd like to thank everyone personally for coming and as you can see, my presentation involves human-wildlife conflict. So first what I'd like to do is to explain a little bit about what human-wildlife conflict actually is. And it can usually be defined as when the interaction between humans and wildlife results in a negative impact on humans, wildlife, or usually it is in both. And India is a prime example of a country that's experiencing tremendous issues with wildlife conflicts because primarily there's a very diverse array of wildlife, many of which are endangered, but also because there's a very large human population, which is constantly having to encroach on territory that was previously only inhabited by wildlife. And so the reason why I first got involved with human-wildlife conflict was because of the Wildlife Institute of India, which is located in the state of Uttarakhand in Dehradun, and I was able to do this project because of my mentors who work there, Dr. Anul Hussain and Dr. Ruchi Badola. And so the Institute does research on all sorts of wildlife. The ones that seem to get the most attention are the ones pictured here, which are the Bengal tiger and the Asian elephant. And this is primarily because they're very highly regarded in India, and they're currently in the IUCN Red List as endangered species. However, the focus of my research on human-wildlife conflict was on a much smaller primate, on a much smaller mammal, which is the non-human primates. And so in India, there are primarily two genera of primates. They are langurs and macaques. So on the left is pictured a Hanuman langur, and the one that looks like a wrinkled old man is a rhesus macaque. My research was primarily restricted to these two because they're the most widespread. The other ones tend to be concentrated in just very small parts of the country, but these you can find anywhere. And so the project that Dr. Hussain and Dr. Badola proposed for me to do was to assess the attitudes that people have about their interaction with primates in an area where human-wildlife conflict is particularly severe, as well as getting individual perspectives on human-wildlife conflict and how it impacts their lives. And to do so, I created a questionnaire, basically, and with the help of two students from the Institute, because I don't speak any Hindi, we were able to conduct these interviews in villages such as the one shown here. And the location where all this research took place was in the beautiful Nanda Devi Biosphere Reserve. So, I know some of you must be thinking, what is a biosphere reserve? It was first, the whole idea was initiated by UNESCO as the Man and Biosphere program in 1977, and the goal was to preserve certain ecosystems around the world that are seen as indispensable in their natural and aesthetic qualities. And in India, the biosphere reserves were created. There's about 15 of them, and the Nanda Devi Biosphere Reserve was one of the first, and it is also the most well-known probably today. It is also, along with the Valley of Flowers National Park, it is one of the few national parks to be named UNESCO World Heritage Site. And so just a little bit of background about the biosphere itself. The biosphere was named after the peak that is pictured here. It is Nanda Devi, and today it is the second highest mountain in India at 24,390 feet. And the name comes from the Hindi meaning bliss-giving goddess. So as you can see from the map, there's primarily two core areas pictured in green, and those are the Nanda Devi National Park and the Valley of Flowers National Park. All the surrounding areas are known as the buffer zone, and that's where most of the villagers tend to live, and it's where we did most of our research. It was like around that area. So now I'd like to shift a little bit talking about the actual research that we did. And we were able to get our interviews from 3 villages for a total of 54 interviews. And so basically what we did is with the prepared questionnaire, we just went from like house to house or village centers, and we just asked people if they were willing to answer questions about their issues with wildlife. And usually we did them like one-on-one, but every now and then we get a group of people where we could really talk more in depth about their issues, like is shown here. And so for the sake of time, I'm just going to touch on the most like relevant parts of the research we found. And so one of the questions we asked was, do you consider primates pests? And 94% of the people responded yes. And this is a pretty big marker in human-wildlife conflict, because if they're willing to consider them as pests, then it's likely that they're going to treat them that way, and that's where the most kind of negative, interaction between them goes on. And then we also ask, would you consider your interaction with monkeys as pleasant, unpleasant, or neither? And in that, you can also see that most people agreed that it was very unpleasant, although some said pleasant, neither, and some even said both. So. A more open-ended question we asked them was, what sort of problems do primates pose for you? And an overwhelming number of people cited that their crops being destroyed in their orchards, which 89% said was the biggest problem. But some also said the biggest problem was chasing them away from the crops, which 11% said was their main issue. When we asked how much of your crop or orchard damage is due to primates, we got tremendous range from 10 to 100%. So as you can see, I mean, if these people depend on, these crops and these orchards, their lives, that can be a huge issue. And another set of questions we asked concerned the personal well-being of the people and their interaction with primates. So we asked them, do you ever fear that you or anyone in your family will be attacked or injured by a monkey? And 63% said yes. And I like to know this is also primarily women that said this, because women are more likely to get attacked than men and children, and since they're usually the caretakers, see why they would think that's a problem. And then when we asked them, do you know that the biting of a monkey may cause some diseases? If yes, what are they? Have you taken any precaution? Only 4% said yes. So that's only 2 people that we interviewed said that they knew of some diseases, and that's pretty troubling, I think. So why does any of this matter? Well, for one, very little is being done in regards to this issue. The government provides monetary compensation for damage due to crops, orchards, or livestock if that damage is due to bears, wild boars, or leopards, but there's no compensation if it's due to primates. So the people are still having issues with primates, and they're not getting any compensation for it. And when we actually asked people what if they complained, they said that every one of them said that they complained. They were told that nothing can be done, and some even told us that they were told that they should exterminate them, which I think is problematic on a lot of levels, because for one, a biosphere is meant to protect wildlife, not kill it. And then also, what is the result if you keep on doing this? So you exterminate 1 or 2, and then you keep on going. So I just like us to think for a moment from another case, which is the tiger. So at the turn of the 19th century, if each of these tigers represent 1,000, you'll realize that there were about 45,000 at that time. Today, there's a little less than 1,500 tigers remaining in India. And so a lot of people think, well, how did this happen? Well, largely because they were unmonitored. There were no laws to protect them, and also they were being hunted. So now people are trying to conserve them, but I feel like at this point it's a lot more difficult than if something had been done previously. So if killing them isn't the solution, what is? Well, it's very difficult to say. There's no easy answer to this question. Some people have advocated the use of fencing to keep like the wildlife out of the crops, but I mean that could work for like porcupines or like wild boars, but I mean you can't keep that out of So the most I can say is that a more effective solution is needed, but at this time no one has thought of one. And all right, I'd like to say thank you to the Center for South Asian Studies Summer Fellowship Program and the Wildlife Institute. All right. Thank you.